Is it important that you Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to The Big Picture. Great Great show, great guest, hata nimesahau. And great conversations. My name is John Allen Namu.
My name is Cherry McKenna.
And I'm Tom Juana.
So now wewe
umempoint extreme left. I was like, what's good?
But yeah, let's run it back.
Yes.
So my name is John Allen.
My name is Tom Juana.
And I'm Cherry McKenna.
So Cherry McKenna is a guest on the big picture today. Hatujam replace Justine, even though tunaweza fanya mapinduzi saa hii, depending on how this show goes.
Yes.
So McKenna Cherry is a lawyer, advocate in training, and a digital content creator with one hell of a story to tell from the Sabasaba protests. She'll be joined later on, or will be joined later on, by Njoki Maina, who is the lead psychologist at Usikimia, that do fantastic work around rescuing men and women who are in dangerous situations, exposed to sexual and gender-based violence. And they also have their own perspective, obviously, on what's been going on. But we'll also be speaking about some of the things that happened this past weekend, including the arrest of Boniface Mwangi and his charging with terrorism, the charges related to terrorism, which were later then dropped, and some of the things that have been happening related to that. But we had a great show last week. We don't often do this, but last week the show was fire because we collaborated with Drunken Lectures to have a lecture of sorts about journalism and the state of affairs within journalism today. We each had some interesting points, and there were very interesting counterpoints that were made by the audience, and we want to read some of them, some of the responses that we weren't able to read last week, just to show you that you missed out. Kukufilisha, Tom.
Vibaya sana. Kiwaru, sindio? There is Motet, who says, I was really pressed to ask. When you said, and I know McKenna has so many opinions about this, when you said your story stops where the facts end, in reference to the alleged massacre in Githurai, that is, does it mean absence of evidence negates happenstance? Case study, the government refuting certain allegations on social media, and the denial cements our belief that they are true, because most of them have turned out so. Into brackets, Adani deal, question mark. When an institution gatekeeps facts or has the monopoly of certain information and your reach is unable to retrieve evidence, what should we, the consumers and society at large, make of it or believe it? Does it all water down to it being a matter of chance?
Those are very many questions.
That's something you addressed at the lecture.
So.
No. I think I can give my opinion on this.
Actually, let's start with
me. So I think the Adani deal and what happened in Githurai are worlds apart. Simply because the Adani deal is a deal that is documented, and there was documentation of evidence of it existing. It's not happenstance. It actually happened. So what makes it different from Githurai is Githurai happened. It happened that the police were present in that area on that evening. It happened that gunshots were heard. There were videos of guns and people who had these guns and were wearing uniform aiming at innocent folks who are, if I'm honest, in their home. But the difference between the two is that the Githurai one, after the day it happened, on the next day, there was no evidence that pointed to a mass murder, which is what was alleged online. There was no massacre from the reports that came out after. I think it was 3 people who were confirmed dead at that time. And we went there, and the evidence pointed to that number, nothing more. And to me, I believe Adani was so different, but to go back to Githurai and just remove the Adani deal from this conversation, is Githurai happened. Journalists went to the field for days after, investigated it, went to hospitals. If any such thing happened, I believe there should have been evidence of some sort that happened.
McKenna?
Okay, I agree, but also not entirely, because I think just observing the way that this government moves, even, I mean, it's not fair to say that they're entirely far apart. I see what you mean, but with the Adani deal, the biggest problem that the populace had with it is the lack of, first of all, it was entirely hidden until the whistleblower, he came out, and then he was like, hey guys, do you know our airport is being sold? And then the whole country is like, Ati, what is happening here? And then that's when they were like, in fact, I think what's his name? Wetangula at some point was like, there's no such thing. And then later on, they had to admit because the documents were revealed, it was exposed that there's actually such a thing. And in fact, they're planning to not only sell JKIA, the JKIA workers were protesting. So the entire problem was hiding and not disclosing the truth to the public. So in the same way, I believe that there's room to think that the same thing might have happened in Githurai if they had the chance to. If they had a chance to cover it up, there's no reason why we should give them the benefit of the doubt if they did it in other areas where it's even smaller things like, okay, not smaller, but like it's paperwork.
But less like egregious in the sense that nobody
exactly, especially knowing the reaction after Kware, you know. So
I think what fueled the Githurai situation is that Kware happened right after, so everyone was like, oh yeah, what happened there was dumped.
was likely what happened there.
But I would also add that every time a protest has happened, we've seen something similar to Githurai in those places, and similar claims have been made.
Where the police go into neighborhoods.
Yes, after dark.
And after dark. And perpetrate all sorts of violence. My view is I guess the foundation of the question, which is for journalists, it's important for us to stop where the facts tell us to stop. Because if we engage in conjecture, then without evidence, then what are we doing? Right? Are we being responsible? Are we being responsible members of society by saying that we have this platform and we are going to engage in, I don't call it rumor mongering, but conjecture without evidence that something happened, and what if it did not happen, right? That also does something to our credibility and the opportunity for people to trust us once again. But here's where I agree with you. I agree to this extent. And I've been on this thing for a while. When you're in an environment that is a low trust environment, then you doubt everything. And that's part of the strategy of many governments that are either inefficient in their service delivery or authoritarian in their methods. They want you to doubt everything, and the single source of truth becomes who? The government, right? But because we're in a situation in this country where that's not really a complete representation of what our government is, but the erasure of trust in institutions, in the people holding those institutions, and the continued and consistent, especially when it comes to the police, habits of the police force in perpetrating violence against the public could lead people to make that leap. You see, but I can't make that leap as a journalist because I need the facts. Na hapo ndio tunakosana na watu.
But also to add, I don't know if you guys saw on Sabasaba, or was it June 25th, the numerous of bodies that were apparently in Quickmart, and then in the final count, in the news, it wasn't accounted for. So it's like people know on social media, there are videos circulating that there were bodies in Quickmart. There were dead bodies in Quickmart, and they were shot during the protests. But somehow, they're not in the final count. How is that possible?
Just to speak to that, I remember the day the protest happened. I'm not sure if it's Sabasaba or June 25th. But
no,
there's something
I believe it was because Sabasaba wasn't around, so it was June 25th.
June 25th, yes. And this is not about Sabasaba even or what happened at Quickmart OTC. That's the one you're speaking about, right? Yeah. The same thing I was told by somebody who lives in Rongai, that Maboyo walinyeshewa risasi in Rongai. I remember very clearly. A guy who I know from that side told me the same thing. You'll know tomorrow.
So and then add the element of mainstream media not being allowed to cover protests. So
I think what has happened is that so much mistrust in everything and every single source of any information in this country. And more so when it doesn't reflect previously thought facts, quote unquote. So on that day, what happened in Rongai, the next day, the same thing happened. No news of bodies. So then you start asking yourself, what's really happening here? And I remember that OTC's Quickmart situation. There was a journalist who went on Twitter and said, I walked into OTC as a journalist and I didn't see any bodies. That's what he said. And I remember people coming after him online.
So he was cooked.
So he was cooked, essentially.
What he saw.
Yes. He said,
rightfully.
according to him, I didn't see any traces of bodies. I didn't see any blood.
Yeah.
There was no such thing. And the days that follow that, if I'm honest, don't know if such a thing happened. Mostly because there's so many people whose job, aside from journalists, is to document these things and document where they happened. There is so many human rights organizations. KNH, HRC have been doing a brilliant job documenting these things. I think what happens online every evening after protest is a lot of peddling of misinformation. It's not disinformation because people don't know. Sometimes it's just folks thinking something happened because they had things happen.
And they might be well-meaning in doing so.
Exactly.
Let's do one more question. Or you can read through them because we've already. Can you imagine? Spent 10 minutes discussing that first one.
Yeah, this is
long.
So,
yeah, just read those and then now we can go into
quickly. I think I'll summarize them because people were very, very impassioned. Waithaka says one thing that clearly stands out in most, if not all, mainstream media are used to propagate neocolonialism and oftenly used as channels by imperialists. In comparison, in social media, mainstream media is designed to air what they want you to absorb, but not important facts that are of help. I generally agree.
You agree? The agreement haijatokea vizuri because that's not specifically true.
Like it's not specifically, but I generally agree.
Again, there's this idea, right? And I'm not saying this. Look at me as a person who left the mainstream, right? But I'm not saying this like in total defense of the mainstream. But that there is this idea that the mainstream works as this monolith, where there's singularity in terms of ideas, in terms of how we suppress information coming out, the singularity and the focus of how we're supposed to project a certain government, and that's not true. Because I've also worked inside the mainstream. It's very diverse. What happens sometimes is that the gatekeeping processes within this mainstream can either be hijacked for, nefarious purposes, or there are people who are well-meaning but don't believe, in their own right, like don't either have the full menu of facts at their disposal, or even a full understanding of what's really going out there, and so they project what could be their image of what's happening. It's not always. Now she's just shaking her head. It's not always conspiratorial in terms of how the mainstream works, because the mainstream that was being bashed yesterday. Let's give an example of the Standard Group that was being bashed yesterday is being praised today purely on the basis of its headlines, or largely on the basis of the headlines and the things that they have chosen to cover. Now, the headlines themselves are a lens through which you can understand perhaps the motivations or the opinions of the people working within the mainstream. Does that mean that, and the infrastructure hasn't changed? Right? The infrastructure that was being critiqued months ago or years ago has not changed. What has changed to inform this sort of complementary point of view that many people in the public have of the mainstream? McKenna? I
think where we disagree is you, and also when you're saying you've worked in the mainstream.
Yes.
John Allen, when did you work in the mainstream? It wasn't during Moi's time, and it wasn't during Ruto's time.
It was during Kibaki and Uhuru's time.
Exactly. Best time to work in mainstream. So I feel like the conversation would be entirely different considering the regime. Because at that time, we didn't have allegations of, Kibaki has bought the media, or even if
there were those allegations.
It's not the same. Did Kibaki ever... Okay, I know he did one time, but did he ever shut down mainstream media and
He did.
Continuously, and also people weren't protesting every day.
The raid of the Standard happened in 2006. The shutdown of the shutdown of live broadcasts happened in 2007.
Okay, let me just say this. I understand these are issues that have been consistent throughout these regimes, but then in Kibaki and Uhuru's tenures, it wasn't to the extent that it is in Ruto's regime, because if we're being honest, not even if everybody knows, the opposition right now against Ruto's regime is 1,000,000 times more than it were in Uhuru's and Kibaki's regime. And that makes, and not only that shifts in a very huge way the role that mainstream media has, because even the point that you had brought up in the previous question on in terms of like how neutral media is supposed to be, and you know, they're supposed to tell the truth, but I think the idea of mainstream media and even media in general on what the truth is and what being unbiased looks like is just taking a stance that won't hurt the government. Because for me, from my lens, yes, I'm not a journalist, but from where I see it, I think right now the neutral thing to do, the unbiased thing to do would be to report the truth as it is. And if we're reporting the truth as it is, we know who is abducting people. The cabinet secretary came out and literally said, I had to go to the president to ask him to release my son from abduction. We've had numerous other examples. For instance, we've had, like, it's so evident. So if mainstream media were to be neutral, they would, for example, not be, same example with Standard, they wouldn't be writing headlines like, you know, this vague headlines that you're wondering, who are they talking about? But yeah, it's throwing hints.
So you're a lawyer, so you know this statement kabisa. There is a difference between what you know and what you can prove, right? And many times, at least from the point of view of the things that we present to the public, it's what can be proven, not just what I know. There's a space for what I know, which is fair comment and opinion and etc. And that's why there's a page in the newspaper, or you have to label certain things as fair comment. That's for hizo ambazo najua, like those are things that I know. What I can prove, the standard is very different. And you'd agree with this because, as I said, you're a lawyer. And what it means is that sometimes the full body of facts will never really come out, right? They'll only come out to the extent that the proof that you have allows them to. And many times, that's the ceiling that many within the mainstream are unable to surmount. And that's why you hear them now throwing unknown parties, confidential sources, etc. People that they can't, you understand? So there's a matrix around that. There are one or two comments here that have come in. I just want to read now as we move on. There's Simi M, second comment here. Mistrust has led to parents rejecting vaccines. And I think in response to that, Sharon Mwangi says, there's been a lot of complaints of kids getting sick after vaccination. Today I came across a short story on Candace Owen's podcast regarding the same concerns in the States. So mistrust is really a big issue. But I want us to move to something that is perhaps the big issue of our time, which is the violence that we saw over the past, year, culminating in various events. The more recent one being the Sabasaba protests and what happened. And for that, I want to reference the thread that you published, McKenna. And this you published, I think, was it a day after?
Yeah, it was just a day after at exactly midnight. So it shows the next day, but it was a day after.
For those of us who didn't see the thread, tell us about what you were talking about.
Okay, so naturally, my response after a traumatic event or like just after something that hurts me is usually to shut down. So the first thing that came to my mind was I need to get this out of my system as soon as possible, because I know I won't be able to make a video because I was crying. I know I won't be able to speak about this, but I need to get it out. So I was like, and also when I was writing the thread, my aim wasn't to evoke sympathy. I wanted to evoke anger in whoever read it, because I was like, there's no way the things that I've experienced today and people are just like going about life as normal. And I know I wasn't even the worst affected, because a week later I met with another friend who we were supposed to meet with in the protests, but obviously we never got the chance to. And he said they had to leave early because a person was shot dead to them, next to them. And the girl he was with had a panic attack, and they had to help carry the body. And I've been thinking, it's been on my mind, because I'm like, I was just looking at him, I'm like, you look like, he looks like a normal person, he looks like my friend, but I'm just like, you had to carry a dead body, like the gravity of that, it just blows my mind. So when I was writing the thread, that's what was going through my mind. I really just wanted to paint the picture of how bad things are in this country, and how I just wanted to evoke a certain kind of anger that I felt wasn't truly there, especially for the people who hadn't been to the street, and especially for the people who hadn't encountered. Because I've been to about 6 protests since, just Ruto-related protests. But that one was the one where I was like, shit, like, I might not. I might not go again. And
I was just tweeting. So for people to then now see it, I've retweeted that thread. And let me read for you the tweet that I thought was really crazy. Right?
Okay.
That now, like, when things really just became serious, the most traumatizing part of the day was the countdown. Or actually, let me read the one before. After being robbed of everything, including our phones, by Ruto's goons, we hid in those CBD public toilets only for them to throw tear gas right there. And then now becomes the tweet before you tell the story. The most traumatizing part of that day was the countdown to leave those toilets. Nitahesabu 5 mpaka 1, nisifike 1 mkiwa ndani. We didn't know if it was a goon or police. We hoped it was the lesser devil, the police. So what did it feel like being confronted with that potential danger? As you're there hiding, there was 15 of you in a toilet.
About
15 of you.
Yeah.
Like, what were you thinking? Like, what were the thoughts that were rushing through your mind?
I don't even think it can be put to words because it was absolute terror. And I feel like I tried to capture it in as much detail as possible in that thread because it's like, to me, it can't, no matter what I say, it can't be put to words, it can't be put to explanation, but it was absolutely terrifying because by that point where we were hiding in the CBD toilet, I had already been robbed, and one of the guys that I was with was also robbed, except when he was robbed, I was robbed by just one person, and when he robbed me, I was like, we were in a highway, I don't know what that yellow, not University Way, there's another yellow bridge in town. That's where I was robbed, and I was screaming. I was like, hey, there's so many people here. People can help me. Hey, goon, uya. And then when I'm shouting that, I realized the friends I was with, they've also ran away because whatever happened, they were disrupted as well. And then I'm realizing the person next to me is telling me, goon mgani. I realized, kumbe mko pamoja. Kumbe mko pamoja. So that became traumatized. I was like, I can't fight back and I can't scream either. So I had to, and it felt truly helpless because me, that phone, I had saved for it. I had gotten a job, like I'd done, like it had a lot of sentimental value, not just monetary value. Because monetary value, it was a 30K phone, but still, like, I worked for it. It had all my memories. So I realized I couldn't run after him. But then with the other guy that I was with in the CBD toilets, he's just someone that I met during the protests as well. We were just holding on to each other to find safety. Whoever you see that looks like a protester, you find him. But with him, when we were walking with him, he was robbed by around 8 goons. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, they're going to kill him.
Goons.
Yeah, because they came, they held his hand, they grabbed him first of all. So I was just there screaming like, hey guys, help us. But no one is bold enough because these people have weapons, and even the people that you're screaming to help them, they can't. So you're there watching him being, I thought they would actually kill him because I was like, there's no way
they'll be able to do that. I want to put a pin in it for a second and welcome our second guest, Njoki Maina from Usikimia. Karibu sana. Let's give her a round of applause. Tunaelewa maneno ya traffic in this Nairobi of ours, we understand. But nonetheless, thank you for making it, and thank you for joining us here on The Big Picture. Obviously, you've heard part of McKenna's account relating what happened to her in terms of the robberies, that also, you know, affected a lot of people. But we're also going to be speaking about sexual and gender-based violence, you know, that took place in the wake of those protests, and perhaps across the year that we've been witnessing quite a bit of unrest in our country. So before I come to you, Njoki, I want us to go to where your thoughts were leading you while you were in the toilet. What did you think was going to happen to you?
I mean, honestly, I thought I was going to die. Like, that's why even I begin the thread. I begin the thread with today the words "I don't want to die" came out of my mouth for the first time. And I remember we all kept saying that, but like I said, this is the about 7th protest I've gone to in just like 1 year, in the span of since last year's June's protest, and I've never uttered those words much let's mean them. So that was literally what was going through my mind, because it was a very, unlike any other time before. All the other times, it was a real possibility, but this time it was realer than real. Like, it's here, death is here, these goons are here, these policemen are here, they're with weapons, they're with all this. And then also another thing that was very apparent, and especially with upcoming protests, which is what I think kind of, it's a paralyzing fear, because you realize that the point the state has reached, they don't care about, and I think you would see this even in the Boniface karaoke video. He was just standing there selling masks, they shoot him dead. They don't care about the extent of violence they seem to be showcasing to the public.
That's a really important point. Tom, I want to bring you in here before Njoki comes in, because you've covered pretty much all of the protests from the 2023 protests, right? But I want us to start in January 2024 with the Femicide March, and talk us through how the protests have changed in their complexion since the Femicide March all the way until Saba Saba, that would then now reflect the reality that McKenna went through.
And I went for the Femicide one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Was that your first one?
Yeah.
That was your first ever protest?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Sorry, before you go, just a quick one. Did that encourage you to then be more willing to go out into the streets?
Very. In fact, that was the first time I met people. I was like, come back. Because I remember just thinking, kwani Kenyans don't care. And then I meet people who are not only educated on these things, but they share in that passion and they're alive to the issues that are happening in the country. And I was like, wow, it was life-changing.
That lit the spark for you.
Yeah.
All right. Tom, tell me.
I actually think, and Njoki, I believe you must have been involved in the planning of that protest to some degree. That was a huge success for protests in Kenya. I think majorly because it showed that people, it was I would say, one of the first few times that people who are not politicians cared about something and showed up in the streets in large numbers. And they won. And that was peaceful, extremely peaceful. Folks marched to Jivanji. The point is made, everyone disperses. The previous year, the protests were more siloed in places like Kibera, Mathare. Violence it's exactly what's happening right now at sundown in places like Githurai and Rongai. But I don't think at that time death was normalized in protests as much as now. As
much as it has been now.
Yes, I think the problem is that exactly what McKenna felt, that I could die here. I don't think people at the Femicide March who are just as peaceful as people who showed up on these other days felt the same.
And that,
just to land here, I think the difference is in the response from government.
Interesting.
It's a lot deadly now. It's deadly to go to a protest.
And also I think that because the agenda is much more clear and people are loudly articulating. Like right now, the phrase that is most common in the country is Ruto must go. It's not reject finance bill. People are not going through the corners. It's
so essentially it threatens power. It threatens power to the core.
How does that feel? That's a great point. How does that feel, Njoki, that an issue that you work on almost every day, because I'm thinking 100% of your clients are people who suffer the worst impact of sexual and gender-based violence. How does it feel to have attended such a well-attended, possibly even organized, such a well-attended march that spoke so loudly, it was global news, about Kenya confronting the problem of femicide, only for it to become worse within the course of that year, and perhaps almost in a very weird, like vicious cycle, because I don't want to call it a full circle moment, that the last few protests we were talking about were where we saw numerous accounts of rape and sexual abuse. Like, how do we go from there to here? In your mind, what really has shifted?
Apologies for being late, and I'm just thinking.
Don't worry about it.
To go up as a son.
Yes.
And some of the things that even make you late is because everything for us is an emergency. If we do not address this now, then when are we going to address? And it's that one phone call that somebody makes when they're in distress and really just need to hear reassurance. At the point where you're hearing all the things and thoughts are that I might die. when somebody has been violated, there's a lot of hopelessness and helplessness, going back to power. Because the person who has assaulted you, what they do is like power play. They want to ensure that you are indignified to the point that you don't feel like you have control over anything. The smartest of people, once caught in a situation like that, as a lawyer who knows the laws of this country, you do not understand, when I'm raped, what do I do? Because then it stops being theoretical. It's now me in that experience. So going back to your question, how would we then see a rise when we have spoken about femicide and we are speaking about wanting to end femicide? Because femicide is the culmination of now domestic violence and all these forms of violence. Then how do we come to, instead of us reducing, it's even higher. I think the lack of humanness. People have become inhumane. There are no consequences for the things that I have done. So I do not feel like something will be done. Yeah. Thinking at it from a point of a perpetrator, their thoughts are like, I know somebody else who did this. There is no consequences that they are faced. So why should I be even worried that I will be caught?
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, but I don't know if you saw the news on the president pardoning rapists and murderers from prison. So if anything, they're encouraged to do that.
Yeah. It fuels you. And on the other end, as a survivor or as a victim, because at that point you've not even you've not started the journey to being a survivor. Yeah. At that time, you're like, this legal system has failed me. It starts right from me reporting and being shut down and told, mambo ya mapenzi hatusuluhishi hapa. I have come here with wounds, stained clothes with blood, and all I am asking is to be heard. And the first thing to be told is that mambo ya mapenzi we are not doing here. Worst case scenario, it's even a female officer who you thought would be empathetic with you and would want to understand what led us to this. Because that unchecked process is what gets people.
I'm still a little concerned with the what led us to. And I want to ask it this way. At what point in a conflict or a debate or something, like let's call it what it is, like a conflict, right? At what point in a conflict do you start to see sexual crimes go on the upsurge? Like what happens to the group psychology of those taking part in the conflict that then sexual crimes become such a staple in it? Because we see it in other parts of the world, and this perhaps is not the first time, but one of the first times that we've seen it so prominently, right, as part of protests that took place. What happens? What's the switch? What's the gear?
The perpetrator is driving in the chaos. They know there's a lot of confusion. You're too focused on too many other things. Once people were planning for the protest, the biggest fear people had was to die, and it's because of bullets, not sexual assault. The mind of I want to call them sociopaths, psychopaths, that's an opportunity for them. Yeah. That's a niche that needs to be caught very fast. So for in the mind of a perpetrator, what they're looking at is an opportunity where I can get away with it. Because if this person was bold enough, why wouldn't they ask somebody to their face? Why do you need to abuse somebody to get something? So you're thriving in the chaos. In some of the cases that we've dealt with, especially from the protest, pretended to be well-wishers, pretended to want to help you, and then drag you to a place where they can take advantage of you. Why? Because there are so many factors driving them. Number one, I won't be caught. There's a lot of chaos around. Nobody cares. Once you're screaming, other people will be afraid to even come to help because they don't know if you're the goon, you're thriving in the chaos. They know that you will be helpless and you're not armed. Yeah. So you will not be able to protect yourself.
Is there any stock to the claim that has been made that there's a correlation between the introduction of goons and goonery, especially in the latter protests, and sexual crimes as a tool of violence, as we've seen in other theaters of conflict, like in the DRC, what have you? Obviously not to that scale, but I mean, do you think that there could be some correlation
Yes, I think there is, you see, for most people, they think that they can use sex as a weapon to make the woman really shudder and quiet down. I think 2 weeks ago, barely a week ago, we were at KNHCR trying to ask for lesser, like being human, especially among the police, asking for less, not even less, no police brutality against people who are unarmed. It was women, mothers, elderly women. Then I don't understand why you need to attack a group like that. These are people who will not fight back. All they're asking for is peaceful protest. So,
but perhaps that's the point. Because they can't fight back, they'd be the ones who are most affected by terror, right? Now that we're talking about terror in this day and age, they'd be the ones who are most affected by terror. Tom, I know you've got a bunch of questions for both McKenna and Jockey. I think the last one that I want to ask for now is, what is the psychology of a group of goons? Like, if you're thinking about them, like from a psychiatric or psychological analysis point of view, like, what is that's driving them?
Wanting to cause mayhem and harm and hurt. And you'll find most of them, it's either because they have been themselves victim of violence. So they want to inflict the same kind of pain to somebody. Others felt defenseless. So they want to ensure that they can put that in somebody else. Others were coming from a point where maybe they could, the only language they have seen before is violence. So that's the language that we'll speak and want to continue to.
But where does the consciousness of the individual disappear and the consciousness of the group then take over? That tunaenda kuchoma hii nyumba, tunaenda kunajisi hawa wanawake, and they're doing it, it's almost like they're moving like one unitary mind.
It has not just happened overnight. What we are seeing right now is not something that is like a light bulb that has happened. Morals have been decaying slowly. Now, right now, there's that recklessness. And people do not see the reason. Life has become just something you can take away like that because it's constantly shown. When you, on the news, what you're seeing is people dead, 10 people dead, and nobody is thinking 10 people dead means 10 families crying, means 100 and thousands of people mourning somebody. Then we escalate to abductions and all those other things, the sexual traumas, and sexual traumas become very difficult because it's a lifetime thing that you have to keep processing. Then people have forgotten and only seeing now. And because it has been normalized to a point where you don't see the pinch, you don't see the effects of it. But it will start to show on us.
Okay, Tom.
And poverty too.
And poverty as well is a big issue. Sorry, Tom.
Okay, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, just poverty, and also the question that John Allen asked on like what's the psychology in like rape being used as a tool. I had watched a documentary. In fact, I even tweeted another thread on it. It's called The Playbook on Netflix. And I basically wanted, but after that, June 25th, just being robbed by goons, I really wanted to see the experiences of other people who had lived in dictatorships, so that I can find some semblance of like sense in it. And in that, the Playbook, in one point, they analyze a dictator called Saddam Hussein. And one of the tools that he used was rape. So he took one of his opponents, for instance, and threatened him and told him, I'm going to, you have to choose one. Either you go out there and tell these people that you are lying against me, or two, I'm going to rape your daughters and your wife, or I'm going to send people to do it, and then kill them in front of you. And so while they were analyzing that, what became evident is that rape is an act of control. It aims to because it has a very extreme psychological effect on anyone who's been raped. So it does something to your mind. And I think it being used in protests is just, again, another tool of control to make people be like, hey, I don't want to be raped. In fact, that was one of my biggest fears on 25th, because I kept thinking, because of the environment, I don't think I'm going to escape here without being either raped or being killed. So I'm grateful that I wasn't, but it's still a very real fear.
That's an interesting point, because as we were talking about the timeline between the femicide march in January of 2024 and where we are today, how central women have been to these protests across these 2 years, it can't be gainsaid, right? Like, this is the first time in my memory as a journalist that I've seen so many women out on the streets. Ordinarily, it's young men, right? And for a reason, because there's an expectation. Ukienda maandamano, kutakuwa na vita, right? Na kutakuwa na polisi. Yeah. But this time around, it's a completely different complexion. Tom, again, because you covered these things, do you think that there was a purposeful intimidation of women so that the protests kind of lose momentum? Yeah. Or is it just something that tended to happen as Njoki was saying, where people then now found the opportunity to then go and attack the people who perhaps might not be able to fight back, to put McKenna in situations where she was, begging for her life, essentially. Yeah.
No, I think it was absolutely deliberate. The leaked chats that Standard published, those were testament to that. And also everything that we saw happening during the protest is testament to that. Women being grabbed off of motorcycles 2 days after goons are reportedly deployed into the CBD at nightfall, that obviously means that this thing was planned and orchestrated. Yeah. And I think the aim is to do exactly what McKenna said, to instill fear in young women who've been showing up in the streets in huge numbers, by the way, from going to the streets. And if you remember that AI video that the government shared to explain why the protests are bad and why it's so much distraction and anarchy, like they like to call it, that documentary, that short 10-minute clip, had a woman in it. It wasn't a male figure sad for what had happened. It was a woman. I think it's 100% deliberate, but I'd like to segue into a different question here. Yeah. I was just reading Njeri Migwi's posts, Njoki, and I know you're on the other side of this because the victims that she speaks of on her Twitter, you meet at some point. She often tweets very, very harrowing things that, if I'm honest, I think they've been happening in Kenya for so long. It's just that Tusikimye is vocal about them, just so Kenyans know. But she speaks of an 11-year-old who was defiled by the father. And she calls this young infant T. I'm just thinking about this whole situation, and Njoki, you might have not met this specific infant and the parent, but how does it feel from your point of view every time you have somebody at your safe house who's been abused and their dignity taken away from them every time something happens? And your phone is even buzzing right now because that's probably something you're supposed to respond to. But it happens so many times and we only see posts of it. But I imagine you respond to a lot more of these.
Yeah, and I think I've been at Tusikimye for over 3 years. And every day you think you've had the worst of humans. And then tomorrow something that you never thought would happen under the sun happens. So yes, I was able to interact with that 11-year-old, and whether it's an adult, whether it's a child, it's painful to just think about it. Today, before I just came here, we had a case of a 4-year-old who was being defiled by their father. So you listen and sit and look at the 4-year-old who is in tears, and it takes you back home. It takes you back to you being a young child and all you knew was play, school, full stop. Yeah. And then you do not even understand, because they can't put it in words, what happened to them. And the innocence that they explain with is out of this world. That's their innocence taken away. And a lot of hate and resentment, not just to the person who did it. If by any chance maybe somebody tries to make fun of them, it looks like it's me who brought this upon myself. A 4-year-old. All they were supposed to do was play, be home, go to school, just do normal things as a child. but their life becomes very different and their perspective changes from there. So it's a harrowing experience that you don't wish on anyone.
I frankly want to hear your opinion on this. I don't think there has been any decay in morality in Kenya. I think it's always been there. The inaction has just been exacerbated over time. And I don't know what your answer to this question is, but what assists these things? What aids them in society?
Just being an enabler. Me being a neighbor who is hearing my neighbor scream in pain because they're being assaulted, and I'm like, I don't want drama. But that's somebody's life. And it could be maybe, and also saying, I only mambo ya watu wawili, those things that we've tried to normalize and make look as if they are normal. Yeah. We no longer care. We become very, I don't want to say, swamped into it's not my business. So let people deal with their own business. I also have a lot on my plate. That there is no society, like there is no wanting to care for another person, because it starts right from where you stay. If you find a man maybe who is older than a child, talking to them and they're in school uniform, that's where it starts. But if I do not take any action, then it will continue. Going to schools, I entrust my child in a school to a teacher who I'm thinking should be responsible and take care of the child. But how many cases are we receiving today of teachers who have assaulted their students?
Yeah. You know, interesting that you mentioned that. We very recently or published an investigation by Christine Mwangi on the same, about that teacher in Alliance, and the kind of reaction that we've heard from schools across. I believe there was a protest today in one of a very prominent high school about the same issue, and how prevalent it has become. I find it interesting that you point to there being, no consequence. But there's also something that I want to tease out that happened with you, McKenna. As you were in the toilet, begging for your life, you thought about those influencers who are just waiting for this thing to die down so that they can post, their eyelashes. The question I want to ask is around desensitization, especially online, because, we were talking before the show about how important social media is as an organizing tool. But when it came to that, to the point where you are now helpless, in a sense, and worried about what was happening on the other side of the door, why did that occur to you? Why did it occur to you that there might be people who wouldn't even care?
Because it wasn't just like an abstract thought. It's something that I've lived. And also, first, just to clarify, I wasn't exactly begging for my life, like, oh, don't kill me, directly to the police. I was just saying it out loud and to each other, like, because it was, and other people were saying it too. Yeah. The girls I was with also over there, they were like, hey, you guys, like, are we going to make it out to town today? Like, genuinely, we might not. For real, we might die, like, in a way that it has never been a reality before. And then with the influencers thing, so let me just give a pre-context. Last year, during the June 2024 protests, this was a very huge conversation that had begun taking shape in Kenya, because prior to that, influencers were very... I cannot take a political stance. I cannot speak up, and then
it will affect my bag.
It will affect my bag. In fact, and most of them weren't even saying that out loud, but it could be seen in the way they were carrying themselves. But then, with the way that things were happening in Kenya, it was impossible to ignore that the conversation was largely on social media, and the people that had the most presence on social media were just speaking up. So in June 2024, by June 2024, because it started in May, when people were like, guys, share the posters for Reject Finance Bill. This is gonna be huge. On 18th, tunatokea kila mtu, it's gonna be huge. And then people are noticing, mbona mimi account yangu ya 300 followers, niko hapa natengeneza kelele, and these people are not speaking. And it was a subtle conversation on Twitter, just subtle, like people throwing it over there, like it's uncomfortable. But then it became a bigger issue when the first abduction of Shad Khalif became proven. And it was like, now your silence is unacceptable. And people began actually creating lists on social media. They began creating posters. They began naming people that they were deplatforming. It became an actual like rallying, to the extent where I don't, I can mention, but Eddie Butita lost about 10,000 subscribers on his YouTube, and he in fact even had to deactivate. And I remember at that time I was like, in fact, I'm not only going to take a backseat in this, I'm going to actively take this conversation to TikTok as well. And I created an entire like 5-episode series, plus another one just like showcasing the ones who had actually spoken up and like encouraging them as well. And then one where it was like, there's this influencer, and I made sure to tag and showcase the tweets of people saying, expressing their discomfort with the fact that they were not speaking up during this time. So this was a problem that started in May 2024. And at the time, it really, there was a lot of comments of like, oh my God, thank you so much for speaking up. These people, no one is calling them out. No one is saying anything. Your courage. And then there was others like, Kwani, one person speaking up could have changed everything. Kwani, who do you think you are? Why are you being a hater? It was a very clear divide, but the conversation had happened. And now a year later, what's happening is the conversation has in fact shifted to, they're not speaking up, they're being performative. I don't know if you were on Twitter that that day when Savara just tweeted heartbreak emojis, and he immediately had to delete because people were like, if you want to sit on the fence, sit on the fence, but don't come here just tweeting heartbreak emojis.
There's a very tantalizing conversation that I want us to have, but let's go step by step this way. So I'll ask it to both of you. In the outcome of a traumatic event, yours was a traumatic experience. Fortunately, it didn't go the way that you thought it might have. Jockey, you deal with some that go almost to death's door.
Yeah.
In the wake of a traumatic experience, sometimes people can become broken by it, or people can become hardened by it, or motivated by it. Am I right in assuming that experience made you even more determined to then now go out and speak about injustice?
Yeah, I've already been vocal, so I don't think it made me change, but it did make me angry. It did make me angry about the lack of social solidarity that I felt was there, especially in some spaces. And I think the person that has showed this is, there's a time Boniface Mwangi put on his stories, don't post me on your stories when I'm dead. If right now you're silent, don't start pretending to care then. And I feel like that's the same reality we're living in Kenya right now. There's so many people that are on the sidelines and then just leaving this fight to nyinyi ndio ma-activists, nyinyi endeni uko mbele. There's no one's life who's more valuable than the rest.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think for me the trauma comes in with, why kwani mi ni mtu mdogo, like me, kwani how I'm not made of metal,
but I'm here.
Yeah, but
so
I'm
perhaps
here.
an awakening.
Yeah, and not even just in the
sense,
protest, just in as much as you can do in whatever capacity it is. Yeah.
How does trauma impact people in various directions? Because there are some who will recede into themselves, and there'll be others who become more outspoken. What's your experience, especially with sexual and gender-based violence, about where most people sort of fall?
Most retreat.
Retreat.
Most will retreat because they feel something was taken away from me. That's not something you'll get back. We have some who is also like physical violence. They'll tell you, yes, I was shot.
Yeah.
I will go to hospital. This is something I never anticipated. Ini maisabu sikuwa nimepiga, so I have to go to hospital, checkups, appointments. I was just scared of a normal checkup. Now it's intense clinical visits that I'm making every other week.
Yeah.
And when you ask them, do you want to pursue for what? Who will I direct it at? I was just going home. I was on my way home when a stray bullet hit me on my mouth.
Yeah.
So that's a constant reminder. Every time I am looking at myself, that's what I remember. That is what I see. So most of them tend to retreat. And there's, again, the lack of trust and confidence that even though I go out there and say this, that there is action that will be taken.
Actually, let's speak about that. So, because you know, sometimes we're accused as journalists of sometimes speaking and beating the point to death about the problem, right? But what does the other side of this look like? What would you then suggest is a pathway towards having a society where we're not going to, let's be honest, we're not going to eliminate sexual or gender-based violence, but there certainly can be more weight added to speaking up against it, or, you know, acting against it. So what does the other side look like to you? Because you're on the front lines, kabisa. Like, what would you imagine is the way that we should, as Kenya, handle this issue?
Right from when your child can begin to utter any word, consent. And even a child will not give consent. So it's basically teaching them that nobody should touch you in any kind of way that is uncomfortable for you. And the minute it happens, you speak up. Then that means for that child to even feel that kind of safety and security to speak up, there needs to be consequences. There needs to be somebody who they know what this happened and this was what was done to this person. So as that child is growing up, that they know, they can trust that this system will protect them.
Yeah.
And to add on that, there was something that happened over the country over the past 12 months, I believe, more than that maybe. The task force, the Femicide Task Force. It's something that Justine and I have spoken about in not such a good light over the very many shows that we've had. Mostly because the public participation sessions are a sham. But even how that whole task force is constituted is up for questions. So how would you, Njoki, want it look like in the end? Like, what resolutions? How do we resolve this issue?
It starts from offering the psychosocial support that somebody should even be doing in the first place, but that is denied. You go to a facility and you're jumped from one facility to another. The specialist or the people you would think would be trained to handle such issues are the ones who even re-traumatize you more. We've had cases where as a survivor goes to a hospital and the doctor is laughing out loud, telling their story of how they have been gang raped to another person. Right when I'm behind a curtain on an examination bed.
Telling the story of the person that they've just heard from. Wow.
That's somebody's life. That is, it's, their perspective is no longer the same. You can't go telling that person, trust this doctor. If I am the one who went to the police station and was shunned down, that's the person, utumishi kwa wote meant you would treat me and protect me. But I came to you, you turned me away. Sama told, enda vumilie, hiyo ni mambo ya kawaida. So if the person who is the first line responder is already making somebody who had gathered the courage, because for somebody to be gang raped and say, I will just go to the police and then I will, and I'm taken to a place where I'm publicly, it's not, I'm not just telling one person. It's like I'm telling 10 people and being vulnerable in front of them. And that's not what I want. So I think going back to that, we also just presented as Usikimye what we anticipated would happen. That these are like bare minimums that we are asking for. A survivor gets proper medical care. How is it that I am the survivor and having to incur the cost of the violations cost towards me? I need to pay for a P3. I need to pay for medical to be examined, all those things. Why is this the cost of somebody who has already been violated? So there are so many, other than the medical cost, their life is almost on a standstill.
And I'm just thinking about the experience of a survivor when they go to a police station. There is also talk of the gender division in police stations being, the gender desk being severely underfunded. The police officers can be trained and retrained and retrained all over again, but this problem never seems to go away.
Because they're overwhelmed.
They're overwhelmed, that's the problem.
And over time, this is not with the lack of maybe debrief and counseling sessions for them. It's overwhelming. They also get to a point where they've had the worst of the worst, by the time you're bringing them a femicide case, and maybe that day they have received like 4 femicide cases, by the time they're on the 5th, change has happened. Over time, this person has seen too much that they have not been able to process. So the last one there will be the one getting the wrath of all these other people. Because at the back of their mind, they're also parents. I'll need to go back to my 5-year-old, and then today took a 5-year-old body from somewhere. It changes how you see the world.
So then what should be done to change that?
A lot could be done. We started with a petition. So just to ensure that femicide is a distinctive crime. It's not murder, it's not manslaughter, it's targeted. It's targeted towards a female. So it should be put as a distinct criminal offense. So by the time somebody is going to that point, there is no discussion. The same way we have the Sexual Offences Act that clearly stipulates this is what is rape. The same way that there should be a law passed to show that femicide is a crime. By the time somebody is going to even think of hurting somebody, they know the consequences and the repercussions of this. This is happening because I'll give a case scenario. We have a case of a 10-year-old who was murdered in 2021. Up until now, we're still in court. How many years down the line? A family is expected to hold it together when their child is no longer there. When there are constant reminders, every year that passes by, mtoto wangu angekuwa grade. Mtoto wangu angekuwa nafanya 1-2. Every other time you're trying to move on, you're now in a court, telling, narrating over and over what happened. This should, and there is also the part where they say the perpetrator also has their rights. So they can be outside. So mimi ni kesi to, he will be outside, maybe free on bond or whatever. Then how can I be sure the person who took away my daughter's life, once they're out, I am safe?
I mean, it's that, I guess, one of those existential questions in justice and in the law, like, you know, how do you balance the rights of the perpetrator, the accused, versus the rights of the victim, right? And it's a difficult one. But I want us to wind up by talking about something that in some quarters, some people have said, yeah, this is the right way things should happen. But in others, people have said this is lawfare, the use of the law and the weaponizing of the law against certain individuals. And we speak about, I think, Boniface Mwangi, whom we all know, and his arrest this past weekend, this past Saturday, arrested at his home in Lukenya, then brought to Nairobi, a search conducted, and certain things being found in his home. You know, I mean, if you read through the list, a majority of them are things that you would find in an office: a stamp, company seals, hard drives, etc. And then there was the finding of the canister and one live round, which the jockey, Boni's representative, legal representative, Njanja, says that, you know, he has disavowed.
I think it was even a blank.
Yeah. But the point here is about the use of the law against people who, you know, perhaps are confronting power, because we have had this discussion about power. I'm going to assume here that pretty much everybody disagreed with his arrest. Yeah. I might be wrong.
No, affirmative.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Affirmative. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to play the difficult position here as devil's advocate and say, and this is not to trivialize what happened to Boni, because I actually believe, and I've said this as well, that it was a huge miscarriage of justice for that to have taken place. But there are people out there who are thinking, yeah, but I mean, if the government, the state has evidence against him, then this is how a lawful arrest should take place. McKenna, what do you think?
It's not, because even Boniface Mwangi is not the first person this week to be arrested or charged with terrorism charges. It's just that he's the most prominent figure. So his name is, everybody knows Boniface Mwangi.
True.
Because from the 25th and Sabasaba protests, there's hundreds of youth and people as young as 19 have been arrested and charged with terrorism charges. Kahawa law courts, Thika law courts, I think there's another one too. and they were arrested with terrorism charges just to scare them and intimidate them into, because you know the bail in terrorism charges is like 300K. Obviously that's unaffordable for even the average Kenyan, or even like it's ridiculous.
Even a wealthy Kenyan.
Yeah, that's a lot
very,
of money.
You know, yeah.
It's ridiculous. So it's just that he's the first person that is of that level and prominent, and even other countries are talking about it now. But this is something that I think, considering the pattern that the state is taking, we can't say this is an isolated justice being miscarried. It's clearly a pattern that the state is testing out, and it's very dangerous, because I feel like this government is putting me to task. Again, earlier this morning, I was researching on other countries that have done this. Egypt has done this. Yoweri Museveni has done this to Bobi Wine. Dictators around the world. Vladimir Putin has employed terrorism laws.
To the south is Tundu Lissu, who is facing treason charges.
Exactly.
As well. Yes.
It's something that they're doing, and you can tell that it's very intentional, because you know that terrorism is such a serious charge that you would be scared, and we can tell that these are charges that are being planted on people. So that's even what's making it more frustrating. But my experience on 25th, like I said, with those goons, what came to my mind and why none of this is even shocking anymore is the realization that the point the state has reached is a point where they realize that it's either them or us. So now they are very lawless. Like, there's no constitution running this country.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So we now have what is a playbook, you know, to reference the documentary that you were watching, in terms of delegitimizing of the opposition, threatening of the judiciary, that you know, a number of people have spoken to, delegitimizing public conversations, actually making that illegal, like not having a the public square becomes a dangerous place, right? An intimidating place. Targeting of specific groups, women, children, not children, well, children, yes, you know, women, children, the elderly, civil society groups, etc. Now that playbook is becoming clearer and clearer. But what's the playbook of the active citizen? What does that look like? Like, if I'm seated at home and I'm just fuming about all of the things that I'm seeing taking place, what action do I take, right? What action have you taken, or should you take?
My answer is going to be very unpopular. I don't even think you guys will air it.
Okay, man,
but I think, honestly, I think the point we've reached with the state, the reality, and that's like, the reality is that they're not following the laws, so it's unfair to tell the populace to follow the laws, because we've reached a point where the constitution doesn't work one way, and in fact Article 1 says the people shall. So it doesn't limit, it reaches a point where the power is in the hands of the people, and at this point in time where goons are working side by side with police, with rogue police, to abduct citizens, torture them, it's reached a point where it's up to the citizens to reclaim their country. And I feel like where I've reached, I recognize that violence would be a tool that the people would be using in this time, and it would be justified. So I feel like we've reached a point where people just have to fight back. You see someone being abducted, kill the abductors.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I have different views on the same.
No,
Jockey, I want to hear your view on the same. Right?
As McKenna explained, I was just thinking to a comment I had somewhere passing by. The police are trained to be police to defend people, not parenting skills. And I was like, what have we become? That's somebody who is being actively listened to by someone, and they follow what they say to the letter. So what have you told that person?
When he was Zimbabwe.
No, they said that the police are trained.
Oh, sorry, yes.
That was yesterday.
That was yesterday.
Yeah,
This was the president, right?
He's saying that parents should be the ones teaching kids.
The police are not trained on parenting skills, but the core mandate is to protect life.
Yeah.
That's the core mandate. So when did it get to a point where then we are not protecting that life?
So then what should we do if that is the state of play?
I think more than ever, this is when we now raise our voices further. Like, so many people have lost their voices over this. then we don't want it to just go down like that. So many people have been killed, so many people's lives have changed forever. If we stop at this, then when does it change?
Yeah.
We might use different tactics because we don't want to see more lives being taken away. Yeah. But we need, like, going back to the drawing board, seeing how do we then come at this, having that we're dealing with someone who will not hear or with people who will not listen. What strategy can be used to ensure that as much as we want to fight for freedom, which it looks like now we are fighting for that freedom back, that people can be safe, that we try and safeguard as much as we can while trying to fight. Because the effects will come back on us again.
Now, McKenna has crossed that Rubicon. And to you, I want to ask you, McKenna, right? Then what differentiates you from the person on the other side who then uses violence?
Because we are using it to protect ourselves while they're using it to harm us. We're using it as retaliation, not as an attack. We're not just waking up one day and saying, let's attack goons. Let's goon, shoot. Now we're saying if they come and they start raping, and Bridget Njoki was watching cartoons and she was shot dead. Yeah. Did you see the pictures of her classmates crying? Yeah. And I'm just like, if the alternative then is just to sit and wait, because what's this guy's name? Kianjui, the guy that was abducted. The same way you've proposed. Raising our voices. Yes, that's an alternative, but he was abducted over a tweet.
Albert Ojwang is
exactly. Dead. Kibet Bull was, in fact, the Kibet Bull one is the one that traumatized me the most because he was following me. I don't know if he still follows me because I noticed that his account started acting suspicious after the abductions. But then he was following me at the time. And if you remember, his abduction happened over the course of Christmas and New Year's. He was abducted over silhouettes and tortured. And we were there asking, have they killed him? Like, why is he missing for so many days? These don't even scratch the surface of the abductions that have happened. Over 100 in just, you know how ridiculous that is.
But are we there? That's the question I'm asking. Are we there where we can now legitimately deploy violence? I don't think
I don't think we're not
I really don't think that
just...
we are, or that we should. Right? That we should.
So we just sit back and just continue being abducted.
This is the difficult thing about being in a moment where you're fighting to reimagine your country. You have to be able to reimagine it without some of the things that are impacting you right now. So I guess my question to you is, how do you do so if then violence becomes the resort that you
because it's not a resort, it's a form of protection. Because notice I'm very insistent on I'm not just proposing that we just become violent to the state just like that. I'm saying this from the perspective of someone who was in the streets on 25th June and I felt extremely helpless. These people, they have weapons, they come, they rob you of everything, and you can't do anything, and you've not done anything wrong. You've come there to say, Ruto must go because he must go. You are abducting us, you must go. You must go. It's our democratic right, it's in the Constitution. If you've lost public confidence, you've lost it. And if people are exercising their peaceful right to demonstrate, there's no way you should be shooting them, killing them, stealing from them. It's not acceptable.
So here's a scenario. The police who are armed come and unprovoked.
And goons.
Yes, and goons. But I'm talking specifically about the police. The police who are armed and come unprovoked to a crowd shoot directly into them. By your logic, this should be an opportunity, or rather the response should be fight fire with fire.
Sorry, just run it back.
Like if the police came to confront a crowd that is protesting peacefully and unprovoked, shoot into the crowd, harming, possibly killing some of them. Your response is that we are at the point where we should say, in acting in self-defense, we should then shoot back.
I mean, if it's unprovoked, and also the thing you've said about separate the police from the goons, you can't because they're working side by side. You've seen the videos. In fact, goons are meeting at police stations to have their meetings beforehand. You've seen the videos of them with their brown sticks in police stations. So there's no separation there. It's one and the same people. Police are also showing up plain clothed to the streets. So these are they are rogue.
Don't you think that that's a recipe for even more violence?
I think we've reached a point where the violence is more. That's why even before the show started, we were having the conversation on 2027 being too late. There are people right now that are experiencing the extreme realities of what it looks like to wait till 2027. It's impossible because when you realize these abductions are happening every day, anytime there's a protest, there are communities that can't sleep because leo siku kuna watu wanakuja kwa nyumba yangu.
Tom Joki, because we don't have much time left, I want you guys to weigh in. Should it be now, like we don't wait until 2027 or who does half time?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me not put you on the spot.
You know.
Joki.
I think we've seen enough, like, of what this person can present. It's only noble of you if you're a leader to, when service above self.
Yeah.
What is the point for
so
you
kama
to
ameshindwa ajitoe.
Service above self.
All right. What do you say to the people then who are like, fine, and this was the point of contention we were having between ourselves before the show. To those people who then say, well, I don't agree with the president or this government, this regime's leadership, right? But I am willing to wait to express my voice via my vote, which is constitutional.
They agree with this government.
By saying that I don't agree, I'm going to vote in 2037, it's tacit agreement.
The government.
Why?
Because there's no one who would not agree with this government and then not feel the urgency.
And therein lies the debate. And this is what I was saying. Unity is not uniformity, right? There are people who are in the Ruto must go camp who don't think that he needs to go right now, that there should be a path there. There are people who are...
And there's a privilege in that. Because those are
I'm not denying
people,
that. I'm not denying that there might be privilege, but there might even be people who do not have the privileges that you think that they do, who also think, by the way, ni kura yangu itakuwa ni sauti yangu.
Hey, look, I think at the end of the day, there is McKenna who is absolutely convinced that there is no school of thought that is rational other than it's half-time.
But I think my problem is even that it's being reduced to a school of thought when this is our lived reality. Like it's not a debate.
It is true. It is true. I believe it is true. But
ideology is in a sense formed by reality.
Yeah.
But
I have a problem with us reducing it to opinions and because I feel like the gravity of the situation on the ground doesn't allow us to be like, oh no, me I think this. You're not allowed to think another way. It's either this guy goes or he goes. Like I feel like the urgency of the gravity that I'm just looking, because maybe I'm on Twitter too much, but maybe because of how much I'm exposed to these cases and just all these things, I'm just like this, even tomorrow is too late.
Lazima ende.
And as soon as possible.
I think so many people would agree with her.
And also the illusion that 2027 is going to be an election. Because if he's doing all these things now, realistically, is this someone that looks like he wants to let go of power?
Okay. And here's my rebuttal to this. The entire point or a big part of the protests in 2024 were about people's right to be heard. And this is why I'm saying, if you have a purist view that this man must go tomorrow, where is the space for the person who thinks that this person must go but not tomorrow?
Journal and the protests weren't about people wanting to be heard.
What was it about?
It was about Ruto going. In fact, anti-finance bill iliisha mapema, and then after that...
Ilianza hivyo, but fundamentally, what are people saying about this government? That it doesn't hear, it doesn't listen to them, because if it heard them, then the clauses in the finance bill would have been...
And he even removed the entire cabinet after the protests had reached like a peak point, just to bring them back and replace the ones he removed with even worse people.
Exactly.
Just to show...
Haskizi watu.
He doesn't listen and he must go.
Yeah. So that's a point that I'm making. Like, you see, if people are there saying that we need to be heard, these things need to change, and we are voicing our dissent or our concerns, and then in the same camp, let's for lack of a better term, the same camp, there are people who say no, aende sahi. Na wewe mwenye unasema ati abaki mpaka 2027, hata wewe uende, right? Tuende, si sote. How then do you form like coalitions? How then do you build bridges to the people who might not be completely on your side or but need convincing, if then the stance is tunalimana mpaka mwisho?
I think that question should be now directed towards your side, because your side is the one that even has the liberty to answer that question. Because you're the ones who are so tolerant of Ruto that he can say till 2027.
It's not tolerance. It's not tolerance of something that is oppressive. But what I'm saying is that there is a diversity of voice in every side. Even in Ruto's side, you will hear there are those people who don't agree with some of the things that are happening in government, right? Why their voices do not rise to the top, or why that doesn't happen, is exactly because of this debate that we're having here. That there are some voices that weigh more than others, right? And that those voices have no contribution to make in this debate.
But
right?
it's like if the contribution...
Come on, Joki, say I'm silent for 5 minutes.
No, if the difference is lives, we're not
obviously
debating.
I mean and I
if
don't
the difference is abductions,
I'm not trying to be didactic about this and try and simplify things, but truly think about the moment that we're in right now, right? There is a very important discussion that people ought to have amongst themselves about the route that we're taking.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have that discussion, right?
We continue to go in chaos.
What then?
Okay, last question. So, John, and I want us to revisit this particular clip of this question in 2027. John Allen, you genuinely believe there'll be an election in 2027? A fair election? In fact, first of all, an election and then a fair election.
Have we even had a fair election?
It's not about what I believe. Yeah. In as much as what I would hope for. My hope would be that this entire, I don't call it a debate because it's too simplistic, but this moment that we're having is really about adherence to the Constitution. Like that we believe enough in the Constitution and in its power to work that can happen, right? Whether it is half-term or no term, for me, as long as it happens in line with the Constitution that we agreed upon, niko sawa. That is my point of view.
The same government that isn't following this same Constitution.
No, because there's constitutional provisions for recall of members of parliament, even recall of a president, right? It is there in our Constitution. What I am saying is that we shouldn't silence people who might believe as you do, but perhaps don't have the same route. Naelewa? And I don't want to be the one to do this because hii sasa imeanza kuwa tamu, but we are now overrunning. Right? Joki,
yes.
Thank you very much for joining us on the big picture today. I mean, the work that you do, we're constantly speaking in such glowing terms about the work that Tusikimia does and how important it is, and how important it is for people to support Tusikimia. As you're saying goodbye, maybe you can talk to that camera over there and tell them how we can support Tusikimia.
Okay. How you can support Tusikimia is time, your resources, come there, serve the children, interact with survivors, just be able to see. It changes. I can tell you it changes how you see the world. We also have a feeding program. We have a pay bill there, so you can reach out. We have survivors that we support at our safe houses. So any proceeds will ensure that that child who is in school gets a pad. We are able to do the feeding program every other day. The call center runs. We are able to also offer psychosocial support to anyone who needs that psychosocial support. So that contribution that somebody offers goes a long way, not to changing just one survivor, but to many survivors. But what we say, one at a time. So we just want to restore human dignity.
All right. McKenna?
Yeah, that's you.
Okay. No. Okay.
Naweza sema tu asante.
Tutaendeleza tu debate. Thank you so much for having me here. I have a huge respect for Uncensored and the kind of work that you guys do. So thank you for hosting me.
Thank you. Kuna mtu hapa Melanie Veli amesema, McKenna said, John Allen, look at me. I'm the interviewer now. Yeah. And Tom, obviously, there's one thing that you didn't talk about. I don't know if we have time to, let me just ask as you start, and if we...
It doesn't have to take long.
All right. Sawa.
This is also another folder that will take so long to kufungua, and it has subfolders.
Na hiyo server bana.
Because tunatoka hiyo server ni kubwa, so tunatoka from protest and what next to the reason we're out protesting in the first place, the economy. So recently the fuel prices are out. It's up between 8.6 shillings and 9.6 shillings overnight. That's a huge jump.
And remember, sorry, you had the justification was a war in Iran.
That's the justification that the Minister of Treasury gave.
But crude prices didn't jump. This justification was that we import refined product.
Yeah.
But there's still something in here. Waambie.
I think the huge problem that we have is the levies that are inside these fuel costs, because around 40 to 50% of these costs are road maintenance levy, fuel, 16% VAT. There are a whole bunch of levies embedded inside this, even development levy, road development levy, I think. There's a bunch of things that are embedded inside this one cost, that the landing cost, ikifika kwa end consumer, it's so burdened with prices that make it even significant than it is right now. But the world over, the reason that is being given is crude oil prices are up because the Iran-Israel tensions are making that Strait of Hormuz, which is like responsible for around 25%
of global trade.
Of global oil trade is being very, very fragile and funny at the moment. So that's the justification that is being given. I think it is important for us to have an economist here, because all the indicators show that the government is doing the right thing. 6.8% CPI. I expect that to increase over the next 1 month inflation because of this specific figure, because 8 shilling is huge.
But I think what guys are upset about is the securitization of part of this money, meaning that they're turning this money into a bond for and borrowing essentially on the basis of the
which is a claim by the former is it the chair of the budgetary committee, Ndindi Nyoro, and the finance minister, Treasury Mbadi, says that this is an unsubstantiated claim. So maybe that's something you can revisit.
So we shall speak about fuel, and we shall be inviting the both of you once again to have this and other discussions here on The Big Picture. First of all, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to everybody who's been following the episode today. Sharon says, great discussion. Let's continue with these discussions. More civic education and educating ourselves on policies. And we note those nominations. Sharon, I'd mentioned your comment earlier. Simi M says, we are coming Usikimia. We are coming to Usikimia, in August. And there's been lots of other comments that perhaps I don't have the time to read today. But nonetheless, thank you very much for joining us on this episode with myself and Tom and McKenna and Jockey. Justine couldn't be here this week. I believe she'll be back next week.
Maybe.
Hey, maybe. Okay,
she's a busy woman. She's a busy woman.
All right. So, Justine, wherever you are, we are waiting for you to come back. Thank you very much. I've said thank you like 3 times. My name is John Alanamu. Have a great day or a great evening ahead, and look forward to this episode on Spotify as well as all of your audio platforms. And just keep supporting The Big Picture in Africa Uncensored. Have a good one. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.